The Zalani colony ship. Peaceful dawn drifted through the cold darkness of space like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge, watching the damage reports scroll across his screen. 17 holes punched through the hull. Life support failing on decks 12 through 18. Emergency power barely keeping the shields online. The evacuation convoy that had fled from Zalani Prime 3 days ago was dying piece by piece. Behind them, the Krex war fleet followed like hungry wolves. 40 dark ships with hulls that seemed to swallow light itself. Their plasma cannons glowed, red in the darkness as they prepared for another attack. The aliens had been hunting the Zalani refugees since they escaped their burning homeworld. Every few hours, the Krex would catch up and destroy another ship. The convoy had started with 23 vessels carrying 80,000 people. Now only 12. Ships remained with 50,000 souls aboard. The bridge crew worked in desperate silence. Navigation officer Zekin tried to plot a course to the nearest safe system, but their FTL drives were too damaged for another jump. Communications officer Lixara sent distress calls on every frequency, but no one answered. The Galactic Council had abandoned them. The other species were too afraid of the Krex Empire to risk war. The Zalani were alone. Captain Veltar was young for a ship commander, only 42 cycles old with silver fur that had turned white from stress over the past 3 days. His people had always been peaceful traders and explorers. They built beautiful cities and created art that other species traveled across the galaxy to see. They had never learned to fight wars like the Krex. They had trusted in diplomacy and trade agreements to keep them safe. That trust had cost them everything. The tactical display showed the enemy formation closing in for the final attack. The escort ships that protected the convoy were falling back toward the civilian vessels. Commander Nixara of the frigate Swiftwing sent a message across the fleet. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the fear underneath. The Zalani defense. Force consisted of 3 frigates and 2 corvettes. Small ships with light weapons that could barely scratch the armor of a Krex heavy cruiser. All escort vessels formed defensive screen around the colony ships, Commander Nixara ordered. Civilian craft maintain current heading and prepare for emergency evacuation procedures. We will hold them as long as possible. Veltar watched the 5 military ships move into position between his convoy and the approaching enemy. He knew they would all die in the next few minutes. The Krex flagship Blood Harvest was 3 times larger than any Zalani vessel. Its main weapon could destroy a planet. Behind it came the heavy cruisers and destroyers that made up the Krex battle fleet. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city. In the emergency shelters deep inside the peaceful dawn, thousands of refugee families huddled together. Parents held their children close and whispered old prayers. The younglings did not understand what was happening, but they could feel the fear of the adults around them. Some cried quietly while others stared at the ceiling with wide eyes. They had already lost their home planet. Now they were about to lose their lives. The Zalani had always believed that help would come. Their culture was built on the idea that good people would always help those in need. They had helped other species during famines and disasters. They had shared their technology and knowledge freely. They had opened their worlds to refugees from other wars. Surely someone would come to their aid when they needed it most. But the galaxy was larger and colder than they had ever imagined. The Krex Empire had been expanding for 3 centuries. They conquered worlds by destroying everything that resisted them. They enslaved the survivors and strip-mined the resources. The Zalani worlds were rich in rare metals and crystals that the Krex needed for their war machine. The location of Zalani space also provided access to several important trade routes. The Empire had decided that the Zalani people were in the way. War leader Gorthak commanded the Krex fleet from the bridge of the Blood Harvest. He was a massive creature with black scales and 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. His species had evolved as apex predators on a world where only the strongest survived. They brought that philosophy to space with them. The weak deserved to die. The strong deserved to take everything they wanted. The sensor operator on the peaceful dawn detected the energy buildup in the Krex weapons. "Captain, they are preparing to fire," she reported. "All batteries charging. Enemy missiles launching in 30 seconds. Veltar closed his eyes and said a prayer for his people. When he opened them again, his bridge crew was looking at him with trust and loyalty that he did not deserve. He had led them away from their dying world only to watch them die in the emptiness between stars. He had failed as a captain and as a leader. The first wave of Krek's missiles streaked across the gap between the two fleets. The Zilani escort ships fired their defensive lasers and managed to destroy about half of the incoming weapons. The rest found their targets. The corvette Dancing Light vanished in a ball of fire and radiation. The frigate Gentle Breeze took 3 hits and began to tumble out of control. Emergency transmissions filled the communication channels as the crew called for rescue ships that did not exist. Commander Nixara's voice came across the fleet channel one more time. "This is our last hour," she said. "We have sent distress. Calls across 17 systems. No Allied fleets are within range. All ships prepare for final defensive positions. Make them pay for every life they take." The remaining escort ships moved closer together and began firing everything they had at the approaching Krek's fleet. Their weapons were designed for police work and pirate hunting. Against military warships, they were almost useless. But the Zilani crews fought anyway because there was nothing else they could do. The second wave of missiles was already on the way when Sensor Officer Kexelin noticed something impossible on her screen. At the very edge of the system, something was happening to space itself. Energy readings that her instruments could barely measure were building up in the darkness. She checked her sensors twice before she believed what she was seeing. "Captain," she called out, "something is coming. Something big. Energy signature unlike anything in our databases. Distance 3 million kilometers and closing." Veltar looked at the display and felt his heart skip a beat. Whatever was out there was moving, faster than anything he had ever seen. And it was coming straight toward them. Space tore open like fabric, ripping apart as the massive human warship USS Liberty emerged from hyperspace. The void around the ship glowed with strange energies that made the stars flicker and dance. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as his ship completed the jump from human space. He was a tall man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of staring at stars. His uniform was clean and pressed, but his hands showed the calluses of someone who had worked his way up from the bottom ranks. The Liberty was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 2 kilometers of angular metal and composite armor that looked more like a space station than a ship. Railguns ran along the hull like metal bones. Missile bays covered every surface. Shield generators hummed with power that could protect an entire planet. The ship had been built for one purpose: war. Lieutenant Amy Chen sat at the sensor station running scans of the battlefield. She was young for her rank, with quick fingers that danced across her controls like a pianist. The readouts on her screen told a story of slaughter and desperation. "Sir, we are reading multiple civilian vessels under attack, Zilani design according to the database. Heavy damage to most ships. Looks like an evacuation convoy." Morrison nodded as he studied the display. 3 months ago, Earth had received a desperate message from the Zilani government. Their worlds were under attack by something called the Krek's Empire. They begged for help or alliance or anything that might save their people. The human government had argued for weeks about getting involved in an alien war. Some wanted to stay isolated and safe. Others said that someone had to draw a line against expansion and conquest. Morrison had read the intelligence reports about the Kreks. They were moving toward human space like a plague of locusts. Every world they conquered was stripped bare and turned into a military base. Every species they defeated was enslaved or destroyed. The Zilani were peaceful traders and artists. They had never hurt anyone. If humanity did not help them, then no one would. "Communications open a channel to all vessels in this system," Morrison ordered. His voice was calm, but carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty to all vessels. Zilani ships maintain current heading and prepare to receive medical assistance. Krek's fleet, you have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system or face the consequences." The bridge crew waited in silence as the message traveled across space. Everyone knew what would happen next. The Krek's Empire had never backed down from a fight. They were conquerors and predators who only understood strength. But Morrison had to give them the chance to leave. It was the difference between humans and monsters. War leader Gorthak received the human transmission on the bridge of his flagship Blood Harvest. He was a creature of nightmares with black scales and teeth like broken glass. 4 arms ending in claws that could tear through metal. His species had crawled out of the deepest caves of their homeworld and conquered everything they found. The idea that one alien ship could threaten his entire fleet was so ridiculous that he actually laughed. One human vessel against the might of the Krex Empire, he growled to his bridge crew. These mammals must have lost their minds. All ships destroy them quickly so we can finish our business with the refugees. The 40 ships of the Krex fleet began to turn toward the Liberty. Plasma cannons powered up with a sound like thunder. Missile tubes loaded with warheads that could crack moons. The aliens had never lost a battle in 300 years of conquest. They saw no reason to start now. Morrison watched the enemy ships move into attack formation. He had hoped they would be smart enough to retreat, but the Krex were exactly what the intelligence reports had said they were: predators who only understood violence. He turned to his weapons officer, Lieutenant Colonel Pete Rodriguez. The man was built like a tank with scarred hands and the look of someone who had seen too many battles. "Pete, I want you to send them a message they will never forget," Morrison said quietly. "Target their flagship with the main battery, full power." Rodriguez smiled without humor as his fingers moved across the weapons console. "Aye, sir. Main railgun charging now. Target locked on enemy flagship." The Liberty's main weapon was a magnetic acceleration cannon that ran almost the entire length of the ship. It could fire a tungsten projectile at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The weapon had been designed to punch through planetary shields and destroy targets in orbit. Against a ship, it would be devastating. The charging sequence began, with a deep vibration that ran through the entire vessel. Magnetic coils along the kilometer-long barrel began to glow as they built up power. Energy levels that could power a city for a year focused into a single point. The crew could feel the ship's reactor working at maximum output to feed the weapon. "Charging complete, sir," Rodriguez reported. "Ready to fire on your command." Morrison looked at the tactical display one more time. The Krex flagship was moving, closer, preparing to use its planet-killer weapon on the refugee ships. Behind it, the rest of the alien fleet spread out in attack formation. They had no idea what was about to happen to them. "Fire," Morrison said. The railgun discharged with a flash that lit up space like a newborn star. The tungsten slug accelerated down the barrel faster than the human eye could follow. In less than 2 seconds, it crossed the distance between the ships and struck the Blood Harvest dead center. The impact was like a meteor hitting a soap bubble. The Krex flagship simply came apart. The tungsten projectile punched through the shields as if they were not there. It tore through the hull from bow to stern, leaving a hole big enough to fly a shuttle through. Secondary explosions rippled along the ship as power systems overloaded and ammunition stores detonated. Within seconds, the pride of the Krex fleet was breaking into pieces that tumbled through space, trailing fire and atmosphere. The remaining 39 ships of the Krex fleet stopped moving as their crews tried to understand what they had just witnessed. In 3 centuries of conquest, they had never seen one of their capital ships destroyed so easily. The humans had just announced their arrival in galactic politics with a thunderclap that would echo across the stars. The silence that followed the destruction of the Blood Harvest lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then chaos erupted across every communication channel as the surviving Krex ships tried to understand what had just happened to their flagship. War leader Vextar found himself in command of the fleet from the bridge of the heavy cruiser Dark Claw. He stared at the debris field where his commander's ship had been and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The tungsten slug had passed completely through the Blood Harvest and was still traveling at tremendous speed toward the outer edge of the system. The Krex sensors tracked it for several more seconds before it disappeared into the darkness between stars. The hole it had punched through their most powerful warship was perfectly round and went from the front to the back without slowing down. No weapon in their arsenal could do such a thing. "Impossible," Vextar growled through his sharp teeth. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel. Destroy it now before it can fire again." The remaining 39 ships of the Krex fleet turned toward the Liberty like angry wasps. Plasma cannons that could melt through a mountain charged to full power. Particle beams that could slice a moon in half focused on the human ship. Hundreds of missiles launched from every tube as the aliens put everything they had into one massive attack. Captain Morrison had expected this response. The Kreks were predictable in their brutality. They always answered violence with more violence until something stopped them permanently. He turned to his helmsman, Lieutenant Dan Parker, who sat ready at the navigation controls. Evasive maneuvers. Now, bring us about and launch all fighter squadrons. The Liberty moved like a dancer despite its enormous size. Advanced engines that bent space around the ship allowed it to dodge and weave between the incoming fire. Plasma bolts that should have torn through the hull passed harmlessly by as the ship twisted through impossible angles. The particle beams struck the energy shields and scattered like light hitting a mirror. Most of the missiles could not even lock onto their target as the Liberty's electronic warfare systems confused their guidance computers. From the massive hangar bays in the ship's belly came 2 squadrons of human fighters, 24 small craft that moved through space like hunting hawks. Each fighter was crewed by a single pilot and controlled by an artificial intelligence that could think faster than any biological brain. The combination of human intuition and machine precision made them deadly beyond measure. Squadron leader Kate Sullivan led the attack in her fighter Storm Rider. She was 28 years old with red hair and green eyes that never missed a target. Her hands moved across the controls with the skill of someone who had been flying since she was old enough to reach the pedals. Behind her, the other pilots formed up in perfect formation as they accelerated toward the enemy fleet. "All right, people, listen up," Sullivan said over the squadron channel. "These aliens think they can hunt helpless refugees. Time to show them what happens when they meet real fighters. Target the escort vessels first, then work your way up to the big ships. Watch each other's backs and make every shot count." The human fighters hit the Kreks formation like lightning bolts. Their weapons were designed to punch through the armor of much larger ships. Missiles that could think for themselves picked out weak spots in enemy hulls and exploited them with surgical precision. Energy weapons that fired faster than the aliens could react carved through fighter squadrons and small escort vessels. The Kreks pilots had never faced anything like the human fighters. Their own craft were built for intimidation and brute force rather than speed and agility. They relied on overwhelming firepower to win battles. Against enemies who could outfly and outthink them, they were helpless. Within minutes, half of their fighter complement was burning debris floating in space. While the fighters engaged the smaller ships, the Liberty's main weapons went to work on the heavy cruisers and destroyers. The ship's missile batteries opened up with a sound like continuous thunder. Each missile was guided by an artificial intelligence that could adapt to any defensive measure. They wove through incoming fire like they had minds of their own, seeking out the most critical targets on each enemy ship. The first wave of missiles struck 3 Kreks heavy cruisers simultaneously. The warheads were designed to penetrate armor and explode inside the target. Secondary explosions rippled through the alien ships as their own weapons and fuel supplies detonated. One cruiser lost power completely and began to drift. Another broke in half as its spine cracked under the stress of multiple internal explosions. "Impossible," Vextar snarled as he watched his fleet being torn apart. "How can one ship carry so many weapons? How can their technology be so far ahead of ours?" The truth was that human military development had followed a completely different path than the Kreks. Where the aliens relied on fear and superior numbers, the humans had built their strategy around technological superiority and tactical flexibility. Every human weapon system was designed to be adaptable and precise. Every ship carried enough firepower to fight an entire fleet if necessary. The Liberty's point defense systems created a wall of fire around the ship that no enemy weapon could penetrate. Thousands of small lasers tracked incoming projectiles and destroyed them before they could reach their target. Missile interceptors launched in perfect timing to eliminate threats before they became dangerous. The ship's shields absorbed what little damage got through and distributed it harmlessly across the entire hull. War leader Vextar realized that his fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy he did not understand. The humans fought, with a combination of technology and tactics that was beyond anything the Kreks had ever encountered. Their weapons hit with impossible accuracy. Their defenses seemed unbreakable. Worst of all, they showed no fear even when outnumbered 40-1. All ships pull back to maximum range, he ordered. We need to regroup and find a weakness in their defenses. But Captain Morrison was not going to give them that chance. He had come here to save the Zilani refugees, and he intended to finish the job completely. All batteries continue firing. Don't let them regroup. Pete, bring the main gun around for another shot. The railgun began its charging sequence again as the Liberty pressed its attack against the retreating Krex fleet. This time the target would be the Dark Claw and its commander, who thought he could run from justice. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of the Peaceful Dawn watching something that seemed impossible. The lone human warship was fighting an entire Krex fleet and winning. He had seen the alien raiders destroy whole star systems with less effort than it took to swat an insect. Now they were being torn apart by weapons and tactics that seemed to come from another universe entirely. "How is this possible?" whispered Navigator Zekan as another Krex heavy cruiser exploded in a ball of fire. The humans fight like demons, but with the precision of machines. Their weapons never miss. Their defenses cannot be broken. Are they gods of war from the old stories? The truth was becoming clear as more enemy ships fell to the Liberty's overwhelming firepower. Human military doctrine was built around the idea that every battle should be won before the enemy knew they were fighting. Superior technology combined with perfect tactics to create victory through shock and overwhelming force. Where the Krex relied on fear and brute strength, the humans used intelligence and adaptability. The Zilani crew watched in amazement as human fighters danced between enemy ships like spirits of air and light. Each pilot seemed to know exactly where their target would be before the alien even moved. Their weapons struck with surgical precision that left enemy vessels crippled but not always destroyed. It was as if the humans were fighting with restraint, even in the middle of a battle for survival. Communications Officer Lisa Park established contact with the Zilani flagship from her station aboard the Liberty. She was a small woman with dark hair and gentle eyes that did not match the deadly efficiency of the ship around her. "This is USS Liberty, calling Zilani vessel Peaceful Dawn. We are going to get you out of here, but I need your ships to maintain formation and follow our lead. We have medical teams standing by to help your wounded." Captain Veltar felt tears in his eyes as he heard the human voice speaking perfect Zilani. They had taken the time to learn his language and understand his people even while preparing for war. "This is Captain Veltar of the Peaceful Dawn. We are honored by your arrival. Our ships are badly damaged and many of our people are hurt. We place ourselves under your protection." Captain Morrison personally took control of the rescue operation while still commanding the battle against the Krex fleet. The Liberties advanced. Sensors could see through the hulls of the damaged civilian ships and identify the areas where people were trapped or dying. He ordered his crew to begin emergency transportation procedures to save the most critically injured refugees. The human ship's technology seemed like magic to the Zilani. Beams of light reached out from the Liberty and touched their damaged vessels. Suddenly, injured people began to disappear from the refugee ships and reappear in the medical bay of the human warship. Children who had been dying from exposure to vacuum were breathing normally within seconds of arrival. Dr. Alex Turner worked alongside his medical team to treat alien physiology they had only studied in computer simulations. The human medical equipment proved remarkably adaptable as scanners designed for human biology adjusted themselves to work with Zilani DNA. Soon, wounded refugees who had been beyond hope were receiving treatment that would save their lives. But the battle was far from over. War leader Vextar watched his fleet being destroyed ship by ship and realized that conventional tactics would never work against the human vessel. Their technology was too advanced and their crew too skilled for any normal military approach. He needed something desperate and final. "All remaining ships listen to my orders," he broadcast across the Krex fleet. "We cannot defeat this enemy with weapons. All vessels set course for the human ship and prepare for ramming speed. We will bring them down through sacrifice and determination." 18 Krex ships remained from the original fleet of 40. Heavy cruisers and destroyers that had been the pride of the Empire now turned toward the Liberty, with their engines at maximum power. They would crash into the human vessel and destroy it, through sheer mass and momentum. It was a tactic born of desperation, but it might be their only chance. Lieutenant Amy Chen detected the course change immediately. Sir, enemy vessels are converging on our position. They have stopped firing and are coming straight at us. All ships accelerating to ramming speed. Captain Morrison's expression did not change as he processed the information. He had seen desperate enemies try this tactic before during the war with the Centauri pirates. The answer was always the same. Overwhelming firepower applied with perfect timing. Then we will have to stop them before they get here. All batteries rapid fire mode. Don't let a single ship through our defensive perimeter. The Liberty's weapons systems shifted into a mode of operation that pushed them to their absolute limits. Railguns that normally fired once every 30 seconds began cycling every 5 seconds. Missile launchers emptied their magazines in continuous streams of guided death. Energy weapons that could melt asteroids swept back and forth across the incoming enemy formation, like searchlights made of destruction. The space between the Liberty and the charging Krex ships became a wall of fire and exploding metal. Each alien vessel had to survive passage through a killing field that grew more intense with every passing second. The first ships to reach the outer edge of the defensive zone simply vanished as multiple railgun rounds struck them simultaneously. A Krex destroyer made it halfway through the gauntlet before a spread of missiles found every weak point in its armor. The ship broke apart in a chain of explosions that sent debris spinning in all directions. Another heavy cruiser lost its engines to a precise energy weapon strike and tumbled out of control into the path of its own allies. War leader Vextar's ship, Dark Claw, was one of the last to enter the kill zone. His bridge crew was silent as they watched death approaching from every direction. Missiles tracked them with impossible accuracy, while energy beams reached out like the fingers of an angry god. The Krex commander realized in his final moments that he had underestimated not just human technology, but human determination. The Dark Claw died 3 kilometers short of its target as the Liberty's main railgun spoke once more. The tungsten slug passed through the heavy cruiser from bow to stern and continued on to destroy 2 more ships behind it. Within seconds, the last of the ramming attack had been reduced to glowing debris. Silence fell across the battlefield like snow settling on a winter landscape. The last Krex vessel had been reduced to glowing fragments that tumbled slowly through space. 40 ships of the enemy fleet had been destroyed in less than 30 minutes by a single human warship. The USS Liberty hung motionless among the debris field, like a metal mountain that had witnessed the end of the world. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge looking at the tactical display that showed nothing but empty space where the Krex fleet had been. His crew worked quietly at their stations, checking systems and counting ammunition. The battle had been won so completely that it felt almost anticlimactic. The enemy that had seemed so terrible just minutes before was now nothing but scrap metal, floating in the void. Damage report, Morrison requested from his engineering officer, Lieutenant Commander Bob Evans. The man was built like a bear with hands that could fix anything mechanical. He had kept the Liberty running through 3 different wars and never failed to have good news when it mattered most. No significant damage, sir, Evans reported with obvious satisfaction. Shields absorbed what little fire got through our point defenses. All weapon systems operating at full capacity. We could fight another battle just like this one without breaking a sweat. The Zalani convoy drifted nearby with their crews staring out viewports at the wreckage of their tormentors. Children who had been hiding in emergency shelters were brought to windows so they could see that the monsters were gone. Adults who had given up hope now wept with relief as they realized they would live to see another day. The human ship had appeared from nowhere like something from their oldest myths and saved them all. Dr. Turner worked in the medical bay treating Zalani refugees who had been transported directly from their damaged ships. The alien physiology was different from human anatomy, but the medical scanners adapted quickly to the new patients. Burns from plasma fire healed under regeneration fields. Broken bones mended in reconstruction chambers. Children who had been dying from radiation exposure were cleaned and restored to perfect health. "How many people are we treating?" Turner asked his assistant nurse Carol Hayes as she moved between the medical beds checking on patients. She was a kind woman who could make anyone feel better just by smiling at them. Her gentle hands worked magic on frightened alien children who did not understand what was happening to them. 237 patients so far, Hayes replied while adjusting the settings on a healing chamber. Most of them will make full recoveries within a few hours. The Zilani respond very well to our medical technology. It's almost like their biology was designed to work with our equipment. Communications Officer Lisa Park maintained contact with all 12 ships in the refugee convoy. The Zilani captains could barely believe what had happened. Their escort vessels had been destroyed in the first minutes of the battle. They had been completely helpless against the Krek's weapons. Now they were safe under the protection of technology that seemed to come from a dream. "This is USS Liberty to all Zilani vessels," Park announced across the fleet channel. "We are going to escort you to the nearest safe harbor. Our medical teams will continue treating your wounded during the journey. Please maintain current formation and follow our navigation instructions." Captain Veltar responded from the bridge of the Peaceful Dawn. His voice was filled with emotions that had no words in any language. "We owe you our lives. Our children owe you their future. How can we ever repay such a debt?" Morrison opened a direct channel to speak with the Zilani captain. "You don't owe us anything. We did what any decent people would do when they see others in trouble. The galaxy is big enough for everyone if we're willing to help each other." The journey to safety took 3 days as the Liberty escorted the damaged convoy to a Zilani colony, world that had not yet been attacked by the Kreks. During the trip, human repair teams worked alongside Zilani engineers to fix the damaged ships. The aliens marveled at human tools that could rebuild entire hull sections in hours instead of weeks. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than ships could travel. The story changed and grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. A single human warship had destroyed an entire Krek's fleet without taking any damage. The refugees had been saved, and the survivors treated with kindness and respect. The Zilani government declared humanity to be their greatest allies and opened their archives to human scholars. Star charts that showed unexplored regions of space were shared freely. Trade agreements were signed that would benefit both species for generations. Most importantly, the Zilani promised to stand with humanity if the Krek's empire ever threatened human worlds. The Krek's empire received reports of the battle with disbelief and growing fear. They had lost 40 ships, including some of their most powerful vessels, to an enemy they had never fought before. Intelligence reports spoke of human shipyards working at maximum capacity, building more vessels like the Liberty. The expansion toward human space was quietly canceled as the Empire reconsidered its strategies. Captain Morrison received promotion to Admiral in command of the new Deep Space Defense Fleet. The Congressional Medal of Honor was presented to him at a ceremony attended by representatives from 17 different species. When reporters asked him about his role in the rescue, he remained humble about his achievements. "We did what needed to be done," he told the press conference. "The Krek's empire learned that humanity will not tolerate the slaughter of innocent people. We have the technology and the determination to back up our convictions. Anyone who wants to be our friend will find us generous and loyal. Anyone who chooses to be our enemy will face the consequences." The rescue of the Zilani convoy became known throughout the galaxy as the Battle of Empty Sky. It marked humanity's emergence as a major power in galactic politics. More importantly, it established the principle that humans would protect those who could not protect themselves regardless of species or political affiliation. For the Zilani people, the appearance of the Liberty from the void became a legend passed down through generations. They spoke of the day when hope seemed lost and death appeared certain, until thunder spoke from the darkness and salvation arrived wearing human faces. They built monuments to commemorate the battle and named their children after the human officers who had saved them. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced its presence with a demonstration of power and compassion that would be remembered for 1,000 years. The age of expansion through conquest was ending. The age of cooperation and mutual defense had begun.